Quite a few people get in touch with me and ask what dashcam I'm using. Well, currently in this car I'm using the A118 or B40 because it's a very compact device, and this is a compact car with a small windscreen. It's up at the top there, you can see it from the inside here. Now, until recently I was using another small dashcam, the Mobius, which was fine, but believe it or not, the A118 B40, or I'm going to call it the Wedge for obvious reasons, actually takes up less space in my windscreen despite it being a larger unit. Now, when I've seen pictures of this in the past, I couldn't quite make out what was going on. It's just such a weird shape. It shows this whole sort of big, long plastic tail. But to be honest, I don't need that in my car. So all I'm using is this part here. I'll explain how it all fits in later on. As you can see, this is a budget dashcam, and for that price that you see there, you're also getting a GPS attachment, so that's a pretty good deal. So expect to pay something like that, or perhaps a bit less at the time you come to buy one of these, if you do. Mine came in this generic dashcam box. You could put any dashcam in there, it's not just for this model. In the bottom there's a load of different things, I'll go through these. First off, we've got the instruction leaflet. It's more like a pamphlet really, a lot of small text in there. A couple of useful bits of information though. You can see it's got a 170 degree wide angle lens, 1080p 30, 720p 60, H.264. Also, it tells you that it needs a class 6 or above SD card, micro SD, up to 32 gigs in size. Now, this little bit of plastic that's in the box, I'll explain more about that later on and what it's actually there for. And then we've got the power adapter terminated in a mini USB-B. That's a 12 or 24 volt power adapter, which means you can use it in big vehicles as well. A USB lead for data transfer, a GPS antenna that's adhesive on the back and it's terminated in a 3.5mm jack. There's these little clips which are adhesive which you can route the cable around your car with, piece of string for sawing off your old mount or the one for this camera if you get fed up with it, and then of course the camera itself. So let's just have a look around it. There's a lens on the front, of course. This part here goes towards your windscreen at that kind of angle, and then the lens on the front can be rotated up and down so that you can get it just right to get the horizon in the centre or perhaps just above the centre. Micro SD card, microphone on that side, little mount hole on the top. This side, that's a reset button in case the whole thing goes crazy. You need to press that. This side we've got the USB for the power, and then two sockets that look the same, 3.5mm jack. On this side you'll see one says in and the other one says AV out. The in is for the GPS antenna and the AV out is for a lead that doesn't come in the box if you want to get the video out of the camera over AV leads, but really you're better off just putting the SD card in your computer or something. So that's pretty much it. Now on the back here we've got the screen and 5 buttons below that. So you can see it goes on your screen like this, on your windscreen, and then that screen faces inwards at a bit of an angle like that, just so you can get it lined up and perhaps review things you've recorded earlier on. There's 3 LEDs across the top and the 5 buttons across the bottom, which are very close together. Pretty tricky pressing these, to be honest. I'll turn it on just to show you what it looks like when it comes on. Lights at the top there, little splash screen. The screen goes off on mine immediately, so I have to tap a button if I want the screen to come on. But that's just what it looks like there. I'll go more into detail about this in a second, about the operating system and things. So these bits of plastic, well, there's 2 adhesive parts and then the mounts. So you put the adhesive on the back of both of the mounts and they both go like that. Now this one, that's just for routing cables. That's all that piece is for. If you were to put the camera a long way down on your windscreen, on your windshield, if you want to call it that, and you want to route the cables from the top all the way down to the camera, that hides the cables behind that little part there. These things don't clip together. They're separate pieces. They just line up like that. Now, because I'm not going to be routing the cables a long way down my windscreen, I don't need this part on the right. It's no use to me at all. So I can get rid of that, but if you had a big vehicle with a big windscreen, windshield, you might need that. So this is the part that I'm using in my car like that. It just goes on the windscreen like that, adjust the lens, and then this little part here, that stays on the windscreen, it sticks to it, and the camera just slides off it like that. So imagine that's on the windscreen, you get the camera, you push it downwards and it's clipped in. Now, something to say about that, notice how the camera goes up and away from the sticker, from the adhesive, up towards the top of where your windscreen would be. That means you'll have to have a little bit of a gap at the top, and of course you've got the cable coming out. So remember to leave enough space at the top. If you put it right at the top of your windscreen, there won't be enough space. Now, this is where it is in my car. I'm using a right angle USB power lead on mine. I had to buy one of those separately. I prefer to have a right angle one rather than one that sticks out. Again, I'm trying to make everything as neat as possible. Now, I've stuck that on that sort of dotty bit, that shaded bit at the top of the windscreen in this car, which I can do. The other car I wouldn't want to do because it's a bit more the kind of stuff that would peel off, I think. Anyway, so that's what it looks like. From the driver's side, can't see it at all. Passenger side, there you go. Wire goes up into the head lining, along here, down the pillar. I've sort of routed it along the edge there, you can see it there. It goes down the rubber door seal and then comes back again. It goes through the glove box, as we call it, I don't know what everyone else calls it, and it goes along here and sticks along with those little clips that they supply, which are helpful, and then I've got it into my power adapter here. In this particular car, it's a little bit of a weird power position, so I have to use this right angle dongle and a 2-port USB charger with 1 amp on both ports, so I can do 2 things at once, and that's how I've got it routed in mine. But remember, your car, unless you've got one of these, you want to do it in the way that suits you, and this camera might not suit your car. Can't say for definite. It's up to you whether or not this is a suitable camera for you. Now let's just have a look at some sample clips that I've shot with this camera, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by these. YouTube recently have been improving their performance of their encoding technology, and they don't look as bad as they have in the past, but that disclaimer there says if they do look a bit ropey, a bit blocky, jerky, pixelated, then download some of the sample clips that I'll have available. But looking at this, that looks really good, doesn't it? I remember, this is a budget Dashcam, bottom of the price range. I mean, you've got the G1W, spend a little bit more and you get this one. It's a bit of a neater solution, I think, especially for me in this car anyway. Now, you notice I've got quite a few reflections on the window there coming off the dash. You'll see a sort of red thing in the middle somewhere. That's my hazard button. I don't mind about this, but some people get obsessed about reflections on their windscreen. I'll do a future video on this one. I've ordered a little circular polarizing filter that isn't designed for the camera, it's designed for compact cameras, but I'm going to try it and see if I can reduce these reflections on this particular camera, and if I can, maybe that solution will work for other cameras as well. Now, as far as things like the timestamp at the bottom right, time and date stamp, that can be switched off. It doesn't have to be on, and by the way, the time's wrong as well. It's an hour behind where it should be. I didn't adjust it for summertime, so it's an hour back from where it should be, but about 2 days, or was it a day after this? Yeah, 2 days after this, it'll be right, because we moved back now to GMT again. Now, I'm going to show you the join between clips. There's always a little segments. I record in 1 minute segments, that's my choice, but every minute you'll get a little jump like this. As I go around this bend, you'll see a post box on the left, and just look for that, and there you go. See it twice. Every time there's a join between clips, you get a 1 second or just under 1 second overlap between clips, so you get to see the same last second twice, which is a little bit annoying, but it's just how these particular cameras work. But remember, that means you're going to get everything recorded. You've got no chance of missing anything because everything's on the camera and some of the things are there twice just for 1 second. So really good performance with this camera all round. It does have a little bit of an Achilles heel though. There's a couple of things. The first one is that it doesn't cope particularly well when you go into bright light. Now, it's got to be a certain kind of bright light, like this, for example, where you've got a cloud with the sun behind it. Notice how everything's gone very dark on the ground. It's pretty hard to make things out, and then I'll show you a little bit more in a second where it gets even worse. I mean, that's really too dark. Look at the time there. It's actually 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a nice, bright, sunny day. Look at the darkness. That's just it's adjusting wrong for the conditions. It doesn't always do that. I mean, look at this now. I'm definitely going to be driving towards the sun in a second, and yet you can still make everything out. So it just seems to be particular situations, perhaps where the sky's all white but bright or something. I'm not quite sure why, but it's not perfect, put it that way, as far as dealing with conditions where the sun is in the lens. One thing it does do quite well though is adjust between light and dark. Look at this going in a tunnel. It's adjusted very quickly there, so you can see what's going on, and now I'm coming out the other side and it's adjusted quickly for that as well. Remember, again, performance is coming from a budget dash cam. We're not talking about a £200–300 device here. This is sort of 50 quid or something. It's a bit of a bargain really. And there's that red blotch you can see in the middle of the screen there, which is my emergency button. You might be able to see it reflecting in the window there. Right, night time. Good performance at night. Perhaps not the best of any that I've seen, but really quite respectable and perfectly good enough for me. There is a bit of an issue though, and it's to do with the sound. So far you've just heard me blathering over it, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to be quiet for a second, and then you can listen to me in the car, and then you'll get a bit of an idea as to what I'm talking about. Now you may be able to hear an annoying high-pitched whistle on the sound. Now that might just be something to do with the camera not liking the electrical system in my car. It might be that I've got a slightly faulty camera without getting a couple of different cards, a couple of different cameras to test. I'll never know, but I can pretty safely say that if you buy this camera, the sound quality is going to be pretty poor. I feel I should butt in on myself here and just elaborate a little bit. I'm not too bothered about the sound myself. It's not an issue. I don't need good quality sound on my dash cams. I'm quite happy with this whistly sound. To be honest, I'll never listen to it. I just want it for the video. But I needed to mention it because some people find things like audio on dash cams important. If I hadn't mentioned it, they'd say you didn't mention it, so I have. So if sound is a big issue to you and very important in your dash cam, then you probably want to give this one a miss. But I'd say if that is very important to you, you pretty much missed the point of a dash cam. And by that I mean the purpose of a dash cam is to record evidence of who did what in the event of an accident. And I'm sure you've seen some of those Russian dash cam videos on YouTube, and if you don't speak Russian you probably didn't know what anyone was saying, but I guess you can pretty much figure out who was to blame, and that's all you really need. Now I'm going to whiz through the operation of this camera because it's pretty much the same as every other dash cam I've reviewed recently. There's nothing amazing in here, it's very standard. So we've got the LEDs across the top, the buttons across the bottom, very close together those buttons, quite difficult to press, but to be honest you don't need to bother even touching it once you've got it set up. I've switched it on, power lights on at the top, you can see my finger there to show you what the lens is showing on the screen. Of course you can turn that screen off as well so it doesn't distract you when you're driving. Now I'm going to start recording manually by pressing the record button. Of course a dash cam automatically turns on and starts recording when it receives power, but I'm doing it manually here. Right, the mic light's on, record light's on, and it's flashing on the screen. Press the mic button, the mic light goes off. That means you've turned the microphone off if you don't want people to hear what you're saying inside the car. Now I'll stop the recording. That button in the middle, by the way, if you were recording and you press that one, that saves one of those locked emergency files that don't get overwritten when the card loops over the oldest footage. Going into the menus here, let's just rush down these because it's all very standard. First off, resolution. You've got a choice of 1080p 30, 720p 60 and a few others that you're not going to use. In fact, I didn't use 720p 60 even. I just left it in 1080p 30 and I think most people will do the same. Loop recording, got a choice of the lengths of loops, 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes or off. HDR on or off, I left it on mine. Exposure value up and down, left it in the centre. Motion detection, don't bother with that, turn it off. Record audio, I've left it on. Date stamp on or off. GPS on or off. And finally G-sensor, which you can select the sensitivity, low, medium and high, or you can switch it off entirely. Now moving across into the one with the spanners on at the top there, we get into the second setup menu. This lets you set the date and time. It will pull that through from the GPS as well, but you need to set the right time zone if you're doing that. I should have set mine +1, but it was pulling through the date at GMT 0, but adjust it depending on what part of the world you're in. Auto power off, how long before the camera turns off when it's not doing anything. Turn the beeps on or off. The language options, I'll just whiz through these so you can see what different languages are in the camera that I've got here. TV mode, forget that, frequency 50-60 Hz. Screensaver, how long before it goes blank, 1 minute, 3 minutes, or leave it on all the time. I have it set to 1 minute. Format the card, you format the card inside the camera of course. Reset things to default, put a reg number on the screen if you want, and this is the version of the software that I've got in the camera that I'm showing you right now. Now, you can play back videos on the camera. It's fiddly, I don't like it. The buttons don't seem to make any sense sometimes, and I have heard that if you fast forward it'll crash, so it's not the best camera for playing things back on the screen. And in fact I haven't found a way to get out of this playback screen back to the other menus or back to record mode without first turning the camera off. There might be a way, but I couldn't figure it out in the few minutes I was messing around with this. I much prefer to get the files off the camera, put them into my computer so I can edit them and join them together and things. The files are MOVs, 1080p 30 files run at about 15.3 megabits a second. That's a variable bitrate, so that will change depending on the situation. Now those files, if you put them into a PC, into the Registrator Viewer software, which is a free piece of software, you can look at the video and it'll pull through the GPS data that's stored within those MOV files, and it'll pull through the maps from Google Maps as well as the other bits of information such as the speed of the car, the G-sensor data, that kind of thing. I didn't manage to get these to work on my Mac, but to be honest, I really don't like GPS data. It's not something I want at all. One thing I should have mentioned earlier on, in the menus there's no way to put GPS information on the screen, so it doesn't turn up on the video files that come out of the camera. You can't put the speed on there or the location or anything. It's only within the MOV files, and then you need a separate piece of software to view that information. Now this video has moved along at quite a fast pace because I've done loads of dashcam reviews and a lot of them are very similar. There's certain buzzwords I've used about segments and clip length and G-sensors and GPS and things that people might not understand. If you're one of those people that doesn't know what any of these things are, click at the top right there where there's that baldy man talking to you. He's going to tell you all about the basics of dashcams. If you like the look of this dash camera and you want to get hold of one, there's links to purchase them in the video description. Those will take you through to the place that supplied me with mine. There's also links on there to my blog, Techmoan.com, where I've got some downloadable samples that you can download to your computer and judge the quality for yourself. So the A118 or the B40 or the Wedge cam as I'm trying to call it, but I don't think anyone's going to go for that. Well, that's the camera I'm using myself in my car, so that's a bit of an endorsement I suppose. It's definitely not the best dash cam I've ever used though. It's just the one that fits best in my car, and that's the most important thing to me. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.